All right, good morning. Welcome to the King Sports News Hour for Monday, the 12th day in the second month in the 17th year of Changi. Tomorrow sitting in for second king of Chanuguk Hyungjimun, and I'm on my own again today. But these instances help us to appreciate the tech team, right? I'm sure you know what I'm saying. I am without the tech team today, so I'm just doing things on my own. Last time I did it a little bit wrong, and I think I'm doing better this time. Anyway, learning through our mistakes. Learning for our mistakes. All right, so where shall we go first? Well, of course, we go first to our trip around the kingdom. Right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, it is 52 degrees and mostly cloudy. Giving way to some sun later today, getting up to 73 degrees, and tonight clear to partly cloudy, low of 51. Father's hometown, Cheongju, in North Pyongan province of Korea, mostly cloudy and 55 right now. Cloudy and low of 40 degrees tonight. Tomorrow, hazy sun, high of 65. Cheonryugun Palace in northeast Pennsylvania, mostly cloudy and 37 degrees. Breezy and warmer with sun, then turning cloudy, high of 69 today. Tonight, mostly cloudy. Passing shower or two, low of 51. Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, cloudy and 64. Today getting up to 84 degrees, breezy and very warm with intervals of clouds and sunshine. Tonight clear to partly cloudy and breezy, low of 64. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, 55 and rain right now. And the rain is going to continue for at least an hour. And then heavy at times, rain will be heavy at times, and then low of 51 tonight. Tomorrow some sun, then increasing cloudiness, high of 70 degrees. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, cloudy and 60 degrees. Cloudy with occasional rain late, low of 53. Tomorrow cloudy with a steady rain becoming intermittent, high of 64. And then in Guangdong province, Guangzhou city, it is currently 80 degrees and cloudy, and tonight rather cloudy, warm, and yes, I knew it, humid. Yes, that word's going to probably appear every day, I suspect, for Guangzhou for the rest of the summer, spring and summer, and autumn as well. Anyway, humid with a couple of thunderstorms today, tonight, especially early, low of 73. Tomorrow, considerable cloudiness with a thunderstorm in the area. And don't forget the word humid. Yes, high of 85. Okay. All right, let's go to Father's Word. Let's see where we are today. I'm in the Korean version of Father's Cheonseonggyeong. And I'm in the Songyagin Ekir, which I noticed in the English version is translated a little bit differently. But, I like to go with, as close to the original as possible. And it is the path of the person of the completed testament. Completed path of the person of the completed testament. So, and today we are in chapter 2, and this is a chapter that is on the view of the family, section 5, which is a section on the family pledge. So later on, of course, in the Cheonseonggyeong, the final book of the Cheonseonggyeong is all about the family pledge, but also in this book there is content about the family pledge as well. And here, chapter 2, section 5.2. Father's talking about verse 1 of the family pledge. I'm not going to read that because I don't have the correct, or shall we say, I don't know if it's correct, right, but the official English version, so I'm not going to try and reproduce that here by sight. But he's talking about verse 1 of the family pledge. So Father says that this verse is saying that our family is centering on true love, is going to, that our family centering on true love, is going to create the kingdom of heaven in heaven and on the earth. This means that each of us is responsible. Each of us is determining that I myself, each person is saying, I myself will create the kingdom of heaven on earth and in heaven. The family was lost, of course, referring to the loss of that family in the Garden of Eden at the beginning of human history. So now the family must be created. And we are seeking the original homeland. It is the original homeland centering on the family. It is not a nation. That is why we must go back to the hometown. So if you have such a family, if you possess such a family, then you must go back to return to your hometown and create the kingdom of heaven on earth and in heaven there in your hometown. And once you have your hometown, then just naturally you'll be able to have a nation, and the nation and the world will all become one. There's no need to be concerned, no need to worry. The kingdom of heaven on earth, the kingdom of heaven in heaven, will all be accomplished naturally. That will all occur within the family. Praise God. Thank you, Father, for the word that you've given us this morning. All right, so now we go and see what is happening, and well, it's not so good. It's not so good actually right now. Let me see. I had this few here. Okay. So over the weekend, let's see. I wonder if I can I do this? Let me try. I'm going to take a chance right now. I'm going to take a chance and see if I can't. Okay. See if I can't share. Okay. Who knows? Maybe I can be successful this time. Okay. No. Oh yes. Oh yes. Okay. It is working. Okay. I think. Let's go back. Let's go over here and see. No, it's not working. It's not working. I'm frozen. All right. Okay. All right, then we're not going to try and do that. Well, over here, I see. I can, with that, oh, right, okay. Yeah, it's not working. Okay, let's stop sharing. Okay, now I'm back. I'm frozen again. Okay, all right, so that experiment failed. So I guess my computer doesn't have a capacity or something. I don't know. It's not such an old computer, but anyway, I guess it wasn't really built for this kind of a task. All right, so I'm looking at a story here. Who wrote this story? This story is by. I'm looking at it on MSN.com, but I don't know if they wrote it. Maybe they did. Okay. Anyway, the title is Iran causes widespread destruction with a weekend of attacks. So it's summarizing all the attacks that occurred against the U.S. and Israel during the weekend. So let's go through this. Iran launched a barrage of missile strikes and drone attacks on U.S. military and high-value assets across the Gulf region over the weekend, scoring many successes. As the war goes into its fourth week, Iran is not backing down despite the Trump administration's efforts to kickstart ceasefire negotiations. Now, actually yesterday, Sunday, President Trump said on Air Force One that, yeah, things are going well. He said, there's been a regime change, is what he said. He said the first regime was all killed, and then the second regime was mostly killed. and we're dealing with a completely new set of people, and so that means that we have regime change. Well, somebody's not getting the memo, because because all these attacks are going on, and some of the attacks have been quite successful, as you'll see in a minute. Strikes on U.S. military infrastructure across the Gulf since February 28 have focused on systems critical to U.S. air defense in a deliberate effort to degrade the operational backbone of U.S. air power. Look at what Iran has been hitting since February 28: radar systems, SATCOM terminals, tankers, and now an AWACS. That's not random, said Kelly Greco, a senior fellow at the Stimson Center, in a post on March 28th. It's a systematic attack on the infrastructure that makes U.S. air power function. Iran's running an asymmetric counter-air campaign. Since the start of the war, there have been 84 reported waves of attacks that have largely destroyed the 13 U.S. bases in the region. Did you hear that? 84 waves of attacks have largely destroyed the 13 bases in the region. After an initial barrage designed to deplete U.S. and Israel's stockpile of expensive interceptor missiles, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps has changed tactics and is firing less but more sophisticated missiles that are targeting radar and other support infrastructure for the U.S. Air Force in an effort to attrit its superior power. As IntelliNews reported, it comes as the I just kicked my camera. Okay. All right. I'm trying to be careful. As IntelliNews reported, it comes as the conflict in Iran has transformed from disruption to destruction that is increasingly affecting the global economy. Tehran brought the point home by sending missiles against several cities in its neighbors, and there were numerous unconfirmed reports of successful missile strikes on some key U.S. military targets, including the destruction of a U.S. landing craft and strategically important aircraft sitting in U.S. Gulf bases. Kuwait and the UAE and Saudi Arabia all took the brunt of the attacks. In addition to the attacks, Iran hit 2 major aluminum smelters in the UAE and Bahrain, and has threatened to retaliate this week on 6 steel plants in the Gulf region for an Israeli strike on Iran's biggest steel mills, which are the biggest revenue earners for the country outside of oil and gas sector. Iran is now, new paragraph, UAE. Iran claimed it destroyed a Ukraine-related drone warehouse in Dubai. Let's see here, 21 Ukrainians were on site, and they were believed to have likely been killed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been touring the Middle East in the last days and signed a cooperation and security deals with both the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are interested in acquiring Ukraine's advanced drone technology. Ukraine's foreign ministry denied that Iran had targeted a Ukraine-related drone warehouse in Dubai and has labeled the claim as disinformation campaign. And so one person says the Ukraine drone specialists are already working in the region and have brought down hundreds of Iranian Shahed drones. Ukraine has deployed 201 to 228 military drone specialists to 5 Gulf and Middle Eastern countries: the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Jordan. Ukraine developed FPV interceptor drones that account for roughly 70% of all Shahed and the Russian-made version Garan 2 shoot-downs in Ukraine. And in Saudi Arabia, a U.S. airbase in Saudi Arabia was struck, leaving American personnel wounded and damaging key military aircraft. The Iranian attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia was larger than expected. Planet Labs satellite imagery from February 21 showed 43 aircraft on the tarmac of the Prince Sultan Air Base, including 13 KC-135 mid-air refueling tankers and 6 E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft. Iran struck with 6 ballistic missiles and 29 drones, targeting the aviation logistical support for U.S. fighter jets, multiple refueling aircraft, and an E-3 Sentry airborne warning and control system, that's AWACS. Surveillance aircraft that cost $270 million each were destroyed. And Two aerial refueling tankers were reportedly among the planes damaged in the strike. At least 15 U.S. troops were wounded, including 5 who were seriously injured. So in targeting the AWACS is illustrative of the emerging Iranian tactics. These planes can carry no weapons, but they are key for gathering intelligence, picking targets, and coordinating strikes by multiple jet fighters. Without the AWACS, the fighter force is blinded. The IRGC took out all 4 of the U.S. $1 billion THAAD radar stations in the region in the first days of the war for the same reason. And so the U.S. has replaced those, I think, by taking the ones that were in Korea and putting them in the Middle East. 2 of the world's last operational EC-130H Compass Call aircraft deployed at the base were also damaged. The EC-130H is a specialized U.S. Air Force aircraft designed for electronic warfare, specifically to disrupt and disable enemy communications and radar systems. Both aircraft require repairs to return to service, with one sustaining heavy damage. The strike has already destroyed 3 KC-135R Stratotankers, aerial refueling planes, and damaged at least 4 others at Prince Sultan Air Base. The extent of the damage and the number of casualties has not been officially confirmed by the Pentagon. Saudi Arabia hosts several U.S. military installations that support operations across the Middle East, including air defense, intelligence gathering, and logistics. And in Kuwait, U.S. forces stationed on Bubiyan Island in Kuwait, including elements of the 82nd Airborne Division, were also targeted in strikes on March 28th that left hospitals operating in emergency mode, according to reports. Kuwait's international airport was targeted by multiple drone attacks, causing significant damage to its radar system, but no casualties, Kuna reported, citing the country's Civil Aviation Authority. A spokesperson for the authority said the attacks were carried out by Iran, its proxies, and armed factions it supports. Kuwait's fire department said a separate fire that broke out in fuel tanks at the airport last week, following an earlier drone attack, had been extinguished after 58 consecutive hours of operations. The reported targeting of both refueling and surveillance aircraft suggests a deliberate attempt to degrade operational capabilities rather than inflict solely symbolic damage. And in Bahrain, unconfirmed reports say IRGC finished off Bahrain's main oil refinery, the kingdom's state-owned energy group and the oldest in the region. The facility had been completely burned out, according to reports, leaving little scope to immediately assess the full extent of the damage or effect repairs in the near term. Bapco was previously hit on March 9th in an attack that did extensive damage. The refinery has a processing capacity of approximately 267,000 barrels per day and plays a central role in Bahrain's economy. Its output supports both domestic energy needs and exports, making it a key component of the country's physical base. And in Israel, Iran hit the Ashalim solar panel station in Israel's Negev desert, according to reports, making a potential expansion of attacks on energy infrastructure beyond fossil fuel assets. The Ashalim facility is one of Israel's main renewable energy sites, combining concentrated solar power and photovoltaic generation. Located in the Negev, it plays a role in the country's efforts to diversify its energy mix and reduce reliance on imported fuels. Details of the extent of the damage remain unclear, and there has been no immediate official confirmation from Israeli authorities or plant operators. The incident, if confirmed, would represent the first major strike on renewable generation infrastructure in the current conflict and will increase Israel's dependence on imported gas. And then regarding the U.S. Navy, Iran launched several attacks targeting U.S. naval assets to stymie the Trump administration proposal and preparations for a possible land invasion around the coast of the Strait of Hormuz. 6 U.S. landing craft utility vessels were destroyed by Iran near Kuwait on March 28, according to initial reports, in an incident that marks a potential escalation in maritime tensions in the Gulf and raises concerns over the vulnerability of U.S. naval logistics assets. The vessels, identified as LCU ships used for amphibious operations, form part of a broader fleet of 32 operated by the U.S. military. These vessels are typically deployed to transport equipment, vehicles, and personnel from ship to shore, playing a key role in expeditionary operations. Neither the Pentagon nor U.S. Central Command has formally confirmed the destruction of the vessels. Iranian authorities have also not issued any statement. The waters near Kuwait are strategically significant, serving as a gateway to the Northern Gulf. The U.S. Fifth Fleet is headquartered in Bahrain, tasked with safeguarding maritime security and ensuring freedom of navigation. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps also said it had captured at least 50-plus Delta Force or CENTCOM U.S. soldiers in the Strait of Hormuz for a second time over the weekend, according to statements circulated by Iranian state-affiliated media. The claim has not been confirmed by U.S. officials. The Revolutionary Guard said the personnel were detained along with high-tech weapons, but did not provide verifiable evidence, details of the alleged operation, or the exact timing of the incident. A spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Defense said the Pentagon was aware of the reports but did not confirm any capture of U.S. forces. We are monitoring the situation and reviewing the claims, the spokesperson said, without further elaboration. And then subheading coalition, it says here moral, but I think morale is what they mean. Coalition morale failing. There have been various reports that the morale amongst the elite troops is falling. Videos posted online show U.S. servicemen who are unhappy with serving in the operation. According to reports, some troops in the 31st MEU and on warships headed to the Middle East are filing emergency conscientious objector claims to stop their deployment. Last week, reports surfaced that Israeli soldiers were also close to breaking point as they pressed ahead in the invasion of southern Lebanon. On March 27, various unconfirmed reports posted online claimed that an entire battalion of Israeli soldiers surrendered to the Lebanese Radwan force after getting into a serious firefight. Okay, that's the end of that. Okay. So Iran is putting up a credible fight. That is for sure. It's not just being walked over. Okay. It looks like I won't be able to share anything today because when I share, then my screen freezes and it's not a very good thing. Okay. All right, so that's the situation with that. And then let's see here. I had another one here. And this is an interesting one. AFD, the Alternative for Deutschland, Alternative for Germany. We've been looking at it as a conservative and populist new sort of political party, which has been challenging the established parties in Germany. But now they are coming out and demanding that U.S. troops leave Germany, saying that Germany should not be involved in this war and that Germany needs to set a new or an independent foreign policy. And President Trump in the past has mentioned the possibility of pulling U.S. troops out of Germany because he's dissatisfied with the fact that they're not spending as much on defense as he would like them to. And so now that may move forward, I suppose, if this becomes if this Alternative for Deutschland party becomes more powerful in the political process. Anyway, let's take a look at this story. I also got this off. This is in the Telegraph, British paper. So the AFD has called for the withdrawal of all U.S. soldiers from the country. Tino Krupala, I guess you pronounce that, the far-right party's co-leader, told a meeting on Saturday that it was time to remove Allied troops and nuclear weapons from Germany in order to pursue an independent foreign policy. During the Cold War, 60s, 70s, I guess, maybe also 80s, the left, of course, in Germany was opposing the presence of U.S. forces there, and also was always demonstrating against the introduction of sort of new missiles. Of course, this was all inspired, or shall we say, coordinated by the KGB or other Soviet intelligence services. But now we see that the other end of the spectrum, the right wing, or shall we say the conservative wing of the political process, now also talking about the removal of U.S. forces from Germany. I think that's interesting, and maybe it's also a sign of the times, I suppose. Let's start implementing this with the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Germany, he told supporters in Saxony. Nearly 40,000 American troops are stationed in the country, which hosts more than a dozen major U.S. military installations, including its European command headquarters. The Telegraph reported on Friday that Donald Trump was considering pulling U.S. troops out of Germany, something he has been thinking about since returning to office last year. The U.S. president, who has expressed a repeated frustration with NATO allies, has threatened to punish members that do not meet his 5% defense spending demands. That's 5% of GDP, is my understanding. Mr. Kupala's comments put him at odds with the Trump administration, particularly over whether America should be able to use German bases for its military activities in the future. He has previously claimed that NATO serves U.S. interests too much. On Saturday, he also stressed that Germany should not be drawn into foreign wars. Praising Spain's decision to block its bases from being used by the U.S. to attack Iran, Mr. Kupala said that's exactly the right thing to do. Spain is not interfering in this war. Germany's Ramstein air base is being used by U.S. forces as a hub to coordinate drone and missile strikes against Iran, attracting criticism from opposition politicians who fear the country could be targeted in retaliation. Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor is basically the same as Prime Minister, has also been criticized for not having a consistent policy on the Israeli-U.S. war against Iran. Last week, he accused Trump of carrying out a massive escalation in the conflict rather than attempting to end the fighting. The rhetoric between Washington and Berlin has become increasingly hostile in recent days. A new poll released on Sunday showed the AfD and Mr. Merz's Christian Democrats were tied for first place among German voters. Well, that's pretty amazing. AfD was a fringe party for a long time, but now it looks like they've grown to a point where they're tied with the CDU, and so I guess if they keep on going, they're going to be the majority. Although, the established parties have done everything in their power to keep AfD out of the cabinet, out of power, but they may be losing that struggle soon, it looks like. While it is not the first time the party has achieved such a poll rating, it does suggest the far right's popularity is proving durable. Such support will make pledges from established German parties never to govern in coalition with the AfD increasingly difficult to honor. While the CDU and AfD are tied at 26% each, the Social Democrats, currently governing as a junior partner, are still languishing at a historic low of 14%. The center-left Greens were at 12% in the poll, while the liberal Free Democrats were at 3%, less than the electoral threshold to require to get any seats at all. So the way elections work in Germany is that people vote for different parties, and parties have to get at least, I think it's 5% or something like that, in order to have even one seat in the parliament. So 3%, that's not going to get you a seat in the parliament. If an election were held today, based on the latest poll numbers, a potentially unwieldy coalition of 3 of Germany's main parties would be required to keep the AfD out of power at a federal level. Meanwhile, a recent state poll in Saxony-Anhalt indicated that the far right was within striking distance of an absolute majority at the state level. The AfD previously sought to court the Trump administration, with Mr. Kupala attending Mr. Trump's inauguration last year. However, the U.S. president's foreign policy, including his military action against Venezuela and Iran, has increasingly distanced the non-interventionist AfD from Washington. Right. So let's see how that plays out. Right. But if a U.S. is required to withdraw from Germany, that would be quite a momentous event. And the U.S. has forces in various countries, but those forces can only stay there as long as the government of those countries, of each country, agrees to it. And in the past, for example, the Philippines government in the past, when was it? Anyway, a few decades ago, I guess, but at one point they asked the U.S. to leave. The government did. And the U.S. said, okay, and got out. When was that? Was that in the 1980s? I'm not sure now. Recently, I think they're asking them to come back. But yeah, but the point is that if the U.S. is asked to leave and it doesn't, all right, then in that instant it becomes an occupying force, and that's not good. That's not good. I don't think the U.S. Voters are going to support that. So we'll see what happens with the AFD, and if they are at any time in the future able to form a government themselves, then it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Yeah. All right, let's see here. Let's see. I have a story here on Marco Rubio's speech in Munich. This was last month. Right? But here, this Epoch Times is publishing an opinion piece now on that speech. And it says here that he's calling for a renewed transatlantic alliance to reclaim and revive a declining West. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm not too interested in that, but let's see here. Let's see here. Let's go to Breitbart. See if anything here. Okay. Oh yeah, the No Kings rallies across the country. Apparently they had a lot of these, and we know who's financing these. These are financed partly by George Soros organizations, but also this guy, this billionaire sitting in Shanghai. I've forgotten his name. Anyway, U.S. citizen, and he's sitting there in Shanghai doing everything he can, literally, to serve the interests of communist China. And so we can assume that he is behind many, if not all, of these No Kings rallies there, as he, of course, serves his king, Xi Jinping. Let's see here. And Spain has closed the airspace to U.S. aircraft participating in the Iran war. So not just the U.S. bases there, but also the airspace is no longer available. Okay. Looking here. Report says Trump weighs sending U.S. forces to seize Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile. This apparently would be, if he decides to do it, would be quite a complicated and involved operation. I think didn't we read something about this last week? Anyway, they don't know exactly where the stockpile is. I mean, they may know, that it's in a certain building, but they have to go down, and probably it's deep in the ground. And they have to maybe fight their way down there, and also create a security perimeter around the building while they're doing that, and so forth and so on. So it's and it will take quite a long time. It's not it's not the Maduro situation at all, and now we hear that this is the Wall Street Journal now saying that President Trump is considering this seriously. President Trump is seriously weighing a military operation to extract nearly 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium, insisting Tehran must surrender what he called the regime's nuclear dust or face annihilation, according to the report published Sunday night. We've heard, though, that the enrichment ratio right now is about 60%, whereas 90% is what's required for weaponization, for weapons grade. So they call it highly enriched uranium. The Wall Street Journal reported Trump has not made a final decision, but remains open to a risky mission that could place American forces inside Iran for days or longer to secure material he has made clear Tehran cannot be allowed to keep. Trump reinforced that position hours later aboard Air Force One, warning that Iran must do what the United States demands or they're not going to have a country, referring to the uranium, he added. They're not going to give us the nuclear dust. The report said Trump has encouraged advisors to press Iran to hand over the material as part of any settlement ending the conflict, while also discussing the possibility of taking it by force if Tehran refuses. Officials cited in the report said Trump has stopped short of publicly committing to such an operation, but has signaled privately that preventing Iran from retaining enriched uranium remains a central objective of the campaign. Even so, Trump continued Sunday night to signal he still sees a possible diplomatic off-ramp. He said the United States is doing extremely well in negotiations with Iran and indicated a deal could soon be reached, while cautioning, "You never know with Iran." Still, the journal reported any efforts to seize the uranium militarily would rank among the most dangerous operations under consideration, with former U.S. military officials and nuclear experts warning the mission could trigger retaliation, prolong the conflict, and require combat troops, engineers, specialized transport teams, and makeshift airfield operations inside hostile territory. Teams would likely need to fly into heavily defended sites, secure the material under threat of Iranian missiles, drones, and ground fire, and transport it out under tightly controlled conditions, a complex operation that could take days or longer. International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi said he believes most of the uranium is located at 2 of the 3 sites struck by the United States and Israel last June, an underground tunnel complex at Isfahan and a cache at Natanz. Before these strikes, Iran was believed to possess more than 400 kilograms, roughly 880 pounds, of uranium enriched to 60%, along with nearly 200 kilograms of 20% fissile material. Experts have warned that the 60% stockpile can be rapidly enriched to weapons-grade levels. The concern has been sharpened by failed diplomacy leading up to the current operation. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said Iranian negotiators made clear during their talks that Tehran would not relinquish its enriched uranium, insisting it would not give up diplomatically what the United States could not take militarily. Witkoff added the Iranians also boasted about their enriched uranium stockpile and its potential weapons capability. The journal further noted Iran retains centrifuges needed to enrich that uranium further, as well as capability to establish a new underground enrichment site, meaning the existing stockpile could still be used to produce multiple nuclear weapons if left intact. The material itself is believed to be stored in dozens of specialized cylinders resembling scuba tanks that would need to be placed into transportation casks and removed under tightly secured conditions, a process experts said could take days or even a week. This is not a quick in and out kind of deal, retired General Joseph Vodal, the former commander of U.S. Central Command and U.S. Special Operations Command, told the outlet. Vodal also told Breitbart News earlier this month that preventing Iran from rebuilding its nuclear program will ultimately require the regime to relinquish control of the material and allow an outside authority to take custody of it. Ultimately, the regime leadership has to be compelled or convinced to give up this pursuit, and they need to allow a cognizant authority to come in and take control of the HEU, whatever the HEU is, right? And verify that the program is shut down. Highly enriched uranium. I see, that must be highly enriched uranium. Okay. Well, he noted this could be done by the U.S. military. He added it would probably be better done through the IAEA with our support and perhaps that of some others. Even so, Trump and some allies have privately argued a targeted operation could remove the uranium without dramatically extending the conflict. According to the report, as the administration continues to publicly maintain it once operations wrapped up within the 4 to 6 weeks window it has outlined. So what did he say? Privately argued a targeted operation could remove the uranium without dramatically extending the conflict. Okay. Well, I'm glad they're still talking about the 4 to 6 weeks window because a lot of people are just ignoring that, saying, sort of assuming that this is going to go on for weeks or even months. That's not good. It really does need to wind up as quickly as possible. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt emphasized that Pentagon planning does not reflect a final decision, telling the Journal, "It's the job of the Pentagon to make preparations in order to give the Commander-in-Chief maximum optionality. It does not mean the President has made a decision." Well, technically that's true, but she's trying to sort of steer the media away from something, though, I think. The reported deliberations come as broader Pentagon preparations are already underway. As Breitbart News reported Sunday, the Pentagon has been preparing for potential weeks-long ground operations inside Iran, including special operations raids and limited infantry missions, while additional Marines and elements of the 82nd Airborne Division move into the region as part of a contingency posture. Breitbart News also reported Friday that Marines aboard the USS Tripoli and paratroopers in Europe have been conducting chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense drills as they headed toward the region, preparations that underscore the hazards tied to any ground mission involving Iran's nuclear infrastructure. But but I think there's still more to this. But the impression that you get, though, is that President Trump's priority is on the nuclear material and not necessarily the Strait of Hormuz. He's basically saying, the Strait is, America, doesn't need the Strait of Hormuz. We can get our oil without the Strait. And Europe and Asia, you guys need the Strait, then you guys take care of it. That kind of thing. It seems to be what the President is saying, although also it's confusing because I think he goes back and forth on purpose so as to confuse the enemy, but he's also confusing the rest of us as well. So then he also has Marine Expeditionary Forces headed towards the Middle East, ground forces headed towards the Middle East, and we'll have to see how things develop over the next, what is it now? He has 3 weeks, over the next 3 weeks especially. And certainly we hope and pray that he can end this within the next 3 weeks. The end of 3-week period from now would be 43 days, 6 weeks. And he's been talking about a 4 to 6 week window. Well, the 4-week window closes this week. We're in the 4th week now. And, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I guess we're in the 5th week now. Yeah, we're in the 5th week now. Yeah. Just beginning the 5th week. So let's hope that things can end quickly. That's the important thing here. But also need to end, so President Trump wants the nuclear material, okay, but it also needs to end in a way that Iran is not going to be able to take revenge against the Gulf countries, because a lot of infrastructure damage has been done in the infrastructure in the countries around the Gulf region. We already had that article where a number of plants have been damaged, and those will need to be rebuilt and so forth. And let's hope that this whole thing can just be wound up as quickly as possible. Yeah. I'm not. People may ask, "Am I supporting the war?" Obviously, I'm not supporting the war, but we cannot just pick up and leave and let the Gulf countries fend for themselves. We started something, and it would be irresponsible for us to just pick up and leave, as some people are advocating. We have to bring this to some kind of a responsible end before we leave. If we could get in a time machine and go back to February 27th, then other options would be available, but those options are not available to us right now. And here, Washington Examiner says Trump went to war with Iran alone. Now he wants company. Yes. On the morning of February 28th, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury against Iran, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and several military officials. Well, dozens actually, right, of military officials. It was audacious, dramatic, consequential, and executed entirely on President Donald Trump's terms. That last part has become a serious political problem. The speed and scale of the operation took most European governments by surprise. Congress wasn't consulted beforehand. Allies weren't brought into the planning. No serious case was laid before the people in the days prior. Trump made his call, dropped the bombs, and assumed the world would fall in line. It hasn't, and American consumers are now paying for it at the pump, with little indication that it will get better anytime soon. Start with Congress. The administration did not seek authorization to carry out the strikes. Top lawmakers were notified shortly before they were launched, primarily a courtesy call, not a conversation. Secretary of State Marco Rubio connected with 7 of the 8 Gang of 8 members ahead of time. Gang of 8 is the congressional leaders. I guess maybe, anyway, 4 Democrats, well, 4 from the Senate, 4 from the House, I guess. The Speaker and the Majority Leader and people like that. Whether Trump was legally required to get authorization is a separate debate with genuine constitutional complexity, as presidents of both parties have stretched commander-in-chief authority for decades. But consulting Congress and seeking authorization are 2 different things, and Trump didn't bother with either in any meaningful sense. And as I've said previously, the Congress has not declared war on any country since, I think, in 1943. And it really has abdicated its responsibility in that respect. The Constitution says that it's up to the Congress and only the Congress to declare war. But the Congress has said, no, we don't want to do that. Instead, we're going to have this system called War Powers Act, where we're going to, say, okay, the commander-in-chief has the right to attack a country or whatever, use the military in a certain way to outside the United States. And then he has to come to us within a certain number of days, and it also outlines the powers of the president when an attack occurs. But this is not the same as declaring a war on a country. And that's part of the problem here, that Congress really is not living up to its constitutional responsibilities. And then they complain that, and I think they've brought this upon themselves, haven't they? Now, for the allies whom Trump has currently called cowards, the U.S. launched a major military operation with little to no consultation with its transatlantic partners. Luke Coffey, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, put it plainly: effective coalition building cannot be improvised amid a crisis. It requires deliberate planning and buy-in from the partners who understand both the risks and the strategic importance of the mission. Coffey also noted that while the White House suggested it was surprised by Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz, that scenario has long been considered a plausible contingency by the policy community. The administration walked into a predictable crisis without a coalition because it never built one. And so the Japanese reporter asked, President Trump, how come he didn't tell us about this before he went in? And Trump's response was, we didn't want it to be leaked to the enemy. We didn't want the enemy to know. And yes, I think that is certainly an excellent answer. But then, then if you're going to go in it alone, then you better be ready to pursue it alone. And having gone in alone, President Trump is now saying, the Strait of Hormuz, we're not so interested in that. So he's not coming out saying it out loud, but that's sort of the quiet part, isn't it? It hasn't yet been said out loud. But clearly, President Trump is only paying lip service to the Strait of Hormuz, and his focus is on the nuclear material. And the Europeans don't like it, the Asians don't like it. We'll see what finally comes of this. Perhaps Europe in the end will have to send military assets to the Middle East. Perhaps Japan even will have to do something, despite their reservations on the Constitution, because they import 90% of their energy, and much of that is imported from the Middle East through the Strait of Hormuz. There's really no other way that they can get that, especially now that Russia is close to them. They used to get some oil from Russia, but now they can't do that since 2022 and the start of the Ukraine war. And also Korea is having a problem in this respect as well. Korea's economy continues to weaken, its currency continues to weaken, and there's really not much they can do right now about that unless somehow that Strait of Hormuz can be opened up and oil starts flowing again. Anyway, here, let's continue with this story. Germany's defense minister offered the most efficient summary of Allied sentiment. This is not our war. We did not start it, as Quincy Institute Vice President Trita Parsi noted. Under normal circumstances, you build a coalition before you go to war, not afterwards. Well, Trump got the sequencing exactly backward. Well, yes, okay. Now a bill is coming due. Gas prices have surged more than 30% in 3 weeks, driven by Iran's near shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil passes, or used to anyway. Let's see what the oil prices are right now. Okay, it's come down about $1 since about an hour ago, but still 114. And even the West Texas Intermediate now is above $100. Let's see. Let's look at the DXY. DXY is above 100 still, 100.2, and okay. And all of the European currencies are weaker against the dollar. Okay. Okay. Stanford economists estimate retail prices could peak near $4.36 per gallon by May, $4.36, effectively wiping out the larger tax refunds Trump has been touting from the big beautiful bill. Morgan Stanley warned the midterm elections could become more sensitive to cost of living concerns if extended conflict keeps energy prices elevated. And this is why it has to end as quickly as possible. Republicans hold slim majorities in both chambers. Trump campaigned on bringing costs down. This is the opposite. Which brings us to a familiar pattern. Trump structured this so that if everything goes well, the credit flows to him. His notification to Congress cited his responsibility to protect Americans and United States interests. But if things deteriorate further, the blame architecture is already being assembled. NATO is full of cowards. Europe won't help. Congress wasn't on board. Nobody supported him. That's why I'm so disappointed in NATO, because this was a test for NATO. Trump told his cabinet this week, we're going to remember. That's the tell. He didn't ask them before. He's asking and threatening them after the fact. The consultation happened in reverse order on purpose. Heads, Trump wins. Tails, everyone else loses. And voters will remember this come November. Interesting. In any case, it does need to start. It needs to start winding down very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Looks like the U.S. stock market is going to open slightly higher today. War is generally good for stocks, unfortunately. All right, except for the oil situation, but the U.S. Although prices at the pump are higher because of the world price of oil, the global prices of oil, I don't think there's going to be a shortage of oil in the United States. Okay. All right, let's see here. We have a Taiwan-related story here. The leader of the opposition party in Taiwan will travel to China to promote peaceful relations. Remember what I said about the person who falls into the lion cage on, I think that was on Saturday? If someone falls into the lion cage, you cannot expect peaceful relations with the lion. The lion's going to eat you. Critics say the visit could be exploited by Beijing to project an image of internal division in Taiwan. Well, in democracy, of course, there's always division. That's the point. Cheng Li-wen, the new leader of Taiwan's main opposition party, is packing her bags for China in a move that reopens old wounds and reactivates a familiar script in the complex relationship between Taipei and Beijing. Formally invited by Chinese authorities, Cheng, 56 years old, will lead a delegation from the Kuomintang, a historic nationalist party, from April 7th to the 12th, marking the first trip by a leader of this party to the mainland since 2016. In the always tense Taiwan Strait chessboard, every move is measured strategically. The host will be Song Tao, a trusted envoy of President Xi Jinping for Taiwanese affairs. From Beijing, the message has been carefully calibrated. The ruling Communist Party wants to promote peaceful development of ties between both parties and both shores. Translated into Chinese political language, it implies reactivating a channel of dialogue that for years served as a pressure release valve for tensions. The trip comes after increased military pressure from the Chinese army on the island that Beijing considers a separatist province. For Cheng's critics, her visit risks being interpreted as a sign that her party is yielding to the threat of the powerful neighbor. For her supporters, however, it is precisely in these moments when dialogue is essential. To understand the symbolic weight of the visit, one must go back to the history of the KMT. Defeated in the Chinese Civil War, the party took refuge in Taiwan in 1949, and for decades maintained the pretense of being the legitimate government of all China. With the island's democratization, the KMT evolved towards a more pragmatic position, defending the status quo, rejecting formal independence, and advocating for economic stability through direct and conciliatory contact with Beijing. Apparently, I've heard this now from a number of sources that Father encouraged Chiang Kai-shek to declare independence when Chiang Kai-shek went to the Taiwan island. And Father had a channel to him and encouraged that he just go ahead and quickly declare independence from China. But Chiang Kai-shek preferred to, as it says here, to maintain the pretense of being the legitimate rule of all of China, and that he was going to go back onto the mainland and defeat the communists and take over the whole country. And of course that never happened. It has not happened. But now the KMT wants to maintain the status quo, they say, but it's anyway, it makes things very complicated. So actually in Taiwan now, speaking against the Communist Party too openly is not something that is welcomed by all people in Taiwan. And in that sense, I would say that it's easier to speak against the Communist Party in America than it is to do so in Taiwan, interestingly. All right, but that's all the time we have today. And I got to go and hope that our tech team can be with us tomorrow. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly. Now I'm going to end the stream.